Right, welcome to part 3 of lecture 1 for FMGT 3224. We've just finished looking at manufacturing cost flows, and we're now going to look at how inventories flow. So this should be just a bit of a review from first year. Beginning inventory, in that case it was plus purchases, but if we think of additions now, because you could be manufacturing these things, so plus additions is materials available for sale, minus any withdrawals gives you the ending balance. So remember now we're dealing with 3 categories of inventory: beginning inventory, work in process, direct materials inventory, raw materials inventory, work in process, and finished goods. And so each of them is going to have, for any given period of time, a beginning balance, additions, withdrawals in this case, which could be moving direct materials, costs out of direct materials and items out of direct materials and into work in process, right? And that will give you the ending balance. And it's important that you understand this. It's fairly intuitive, but it's important that you guys understand this closely, because this process will be used on the statement of cost of goods manufactured, which is one of the key outputs of this particular lecture. So, how does this work? Again, looking at the product costs, we start out with raw materials. So we have some, bits of steel or wood or whatever sitting in raw materials inventory. That would be the ending inventory from the previous period. So we then look at having purchased some more raw materials here, and then if we subtract the balance of ending raw materials, that will tell us how many raw materials were used in production. In other words, these are the direct materials that got moved into the work in process account, if you will. And so when you've got direct materials, direct labor is added into the work in process, and the manufacturing overhead, that essentially these things in green here are the conversion costs, and that, so all of these basically are what is added to work in process in terms of the manufacturing costs added in the period. They are added to whatever was in it there in the first place, the beginning work in process, and that gives you the total work in process for the period. But again, some of that work in process presumably will have been finished off and be moved to finished goods. And so that becomes this cost of goods manufactured, which is a component then of the total cost involved. So a quick little final check here. Beginning work in process was 125,000. Manufacturing costs incurred were 835. 200,000 of partially finished goods remaining in work in process at the end of the month. What was the cost of goods manufactured during the month? Okay, so started with 125, added 835, so that would be 960, and we had 200,000 left over, so 960 minus 200 would be 760. All right, so I'll demonstrate at the end of the lecture how to create a schedule of cost of goods manufactured, but it basically follows that flow you'll see. There is an example in the book, Exhibit 2-8, I think. All right, one final little bit of definitional stuff for us to go through before we wrap up the lecture. And this is a refresher of some things that will have, I think, been, you'll have been exposed to them, presumably in economics. And that is opportunity cost, right? So essentially what the cost or the benefit of the next best alternative, or the best alternative that you didn't choose. Sunk costs. So the whole idea of a sunk cost is, if it's already been spent, then it should not impact on any future decision that you make, because whether you go left or right, or make or buy or do whatever that decision is, the costs have already been spent one way or the other. So the argument of, well, we've already spent so much money on this, we just need to spend a little bit more to get it finished off, is an invalid or a weak argument. The key is, the argument should be, is it worth spending whatever it's going to take to finish it in order to get the benefits of having this thing constructed? The costs that happened in the past are totally irrelevant to your decision going forward. And another example here. Okay, so here's our demo problem, and we are looking at brief exercise 2-7. It is on page 49, and it's for Lomac products, and you're asked to prepare a schedule of cost of goods manufactured for the company for the month in good form. Okay, so here we need to go to, I think it's page 47, and look at, no, not 47, 37, pardon me, and look at Exhibit 2-8, Schedule of Cost of Goods Manufactured. That is what we're trying to create here. So with that as your guide, let's have a go at doing this. And so the first item is going to be direct materials. And according to the colon there, beginning raw materials inventory is the next item. Okay, and that's the first item on the page. That works out to $170,000. Next, we want to add purchases of raw material. And that's the next item on our list, $870,000. And then we're going to, actually, according to the formula or the template, we've got raw materials available for use, should be the next one. And that's going to be $1,040,000. And then we're going to subtract ending raw materials inventory to get the raw materials used in production. So that was 150. And that gives us raw materials used in production, and that should work out to 890,000. Okay, next we've got direct labor. And direct labor is 245,000. And what have we got? Oh, we don't have a breakout for manufacturing overhead. We just have a total, so we'll just write manufacturing overhead. And that was 560,000. And so we add those three components up and we will get our total manufacturing costs. And that will be 1,695,000. Okay, and then if you again refer back to Exhibit 2-8, you'll see that it looks at the beginning work in process, which we're going to add, and then subtract the ending work in process in order to get the cost of goods manufactured in the month. And so we will add beginning work in process, 210,000. So that is 1,905,000 less ending work in process, which was 340, and that gives you the cost of goods manufactured at 1,565,000, double underline. Right, and so that, in a broad brush stroke, is how you go about doing a schedule of cost of goods manufactured. That concludes the lecture. Make sure you do the homework in preparation for the quizzes in the upcoming labs. So Lab 1 quiz will be based on exercises 2-2, 2-5, 2-7, and Lab 2 will be based on problems 2-3 and problem 2-7. That concludes lecture 1.